Hello chess friends and welcome to your Zard of Chess channel and welcome to a beautiful and spectacular but also an instructive gameplay by the latest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 16. Today we see the fish battling out against another top engine Minic in one of the best defenses against d4. Today we see the fish playing the Ragozin defense with the black pieces, and I think this game is really worth to watch because here Stockfish will show us really a cool line of the Ragozin defense. In my opinion, a very instructive game with many sidelines, with many opportunities for both sides. So pay good attention. Maybe there's something for you. Maybe you can solve your problems in d4 play, because many of us, I think, are searching for a decent response, for a decent defense against d4. So pay good attention. With the white pieces, the Minic chess engine opened with the move d4. Stockfish response was knight to f6. We have c4, and now the move e6. If knight to c3 happens, then of course probably black would then go into the nimzo in the defense with bishop to b4. But now we have the anti-nimzo or counter nimzo in the setup here by Minic, knight to f3. Here we have d5, transposition into the queen's gambit decline. We have knight to c3, three knights variation of the queen's gambit decline, and now comes the beautiful Ragozin defense move, bishop to b4. Here Minic continues with still one of the best continuations, I think. C takes d5 releases the pressure in the center of the board. It's not complicating things too much, I would say. And of course the knight is pinned, but also the knight is controlling this. The knight on c3 of course is controlling the center of the board, so I think c takes d5 is still one of the very best responses here by white. We have e takes d5 by the fish, bishop to g5. You see, very dangerous, very sharp play already by these two top engines. So the bishop on g5 is also attacking the knight on f6, but also the bishop on b4 is attacking the knight on c3. Now comes a very important move here by the fish, h6, which I would also recommend you here to play. h6 kicks away the bishop, and now the issue is that the bishop is not controlling anymore the c1 square, is also not controlling the d2 square anymore, which is very useful in some pinning ideas here by black. So now the bishop still is of course attacking the knight on f6, still is of course pinning the knight, but it's a little bit now far away from the action. That's actually the idea about this h6 move, because here the h6 move is already forcing now a real reaction here by white. So after bishop to h4, Stockfish continues with bishop to f5, controlling also the e4 square. We have queen to a4 by Minic, and Stockfish continues now with knight to c6, protects of course the bishop and covers this diagonal against the check. Let's see now options. In the game e3 was played, but let's see also what happens if, for instance, knight to e5 happens. Knight to e5 seems tempting, but actually this is really not the best approach here here by white. If that happens, then we can play simply kingside castling here from black's perspective. After knight takes c6, first of course bishop takes c3, in between check, we have b takes c3 then, and then you take b takes c6. The problem here, real problem for black is for white is, pardon me, that white still needs maybe 1, 2, 3 more tempi in order to secure the king by castling. Okay, the pawn on c6 is hanging. Look at this. Even if you take queen to c6, then this one is going to happen. Queen to b8. And now the rook is also loose a little bit. The rook is not defended anymore. So as I said, that's the issue about this move h6 and followed with bishop to h4. The bishop is not there anymore. The bishop is not covering your king. And that's the issue, because after something like bishop to f6, you don't even pick up the bishop. You play queen to b2. Here from black's perspective, the rook has to move. We attack further the rook. You have to step back now with the bishop, and now rook to b8, the calm move. But black is down the whole piece, but white is facing now many tactical problems. For instance, even if you try rook to d2, then of course you get checkmated immediately, so you cannot move the rook. All of the squares are covered of course by the bishops and queens activity. You could try maybe f3 to escape somehow with the king, but now with rook to e8 the game is, I think, over. You can maybe play g4. Now we take the rook. You can take of course also the bishop. Now it seems so that this could be playable because you have 2 minor pieces for the rook, but actually this is not working. The heavy artillery is coming into the game. Look at this. Rook to e8, very important move that controls the escape route for the king, and now you have to play something like queen to d5. If you step back, we take, and the game is over. I think even if you don't react, then this rook is coming into the game, so it's simply too much pressure against the kings. The bishop on f1 and also the rook on h1 never participated in the game, so this is really a messed up position. Look at this, king to e3 we take, and this is game over. So that's why, as I said, this whole knight to e5, knight takes c6 concept is not so dangerous if you know, of course, what you're doing with the black pieces. So that's why e3, normal development here by Minic. Stockfish plays kingside castling, bishop to b5, again with the same threat, bishop takes c6, followed with, I don't know, queen takes b4. So that's why first bishop takes c3 by the fish, we have b takes c3, and now g5, attacking now the bishop. We have bishop to c6, g takes h4. Very, very tricky idea, forcing now the move knight to h4, bishop to h2, now played by Stockfish, and here comes again, I think, a new critical moment of this opening. What should here white do? If you play bishop takes b7, this actually would not be so good. Again, you didn't castle, that's the issue. Now we attack simply the bishop. If you pick up here the pawn on a7, then there is this idea, queen to e7, with the threat to play c6, and then to simply grab the piece here on b7, because then the the bishop would be pinned here on the 7th rank. And the issue is that you cannot include the rook into the defense. That's now the huge problem. You can maybe try kingside castling, but look at this, with c6 you have to step back, and after queen to a6 you lose the piece. Even if you play here queen to a6 immediately, then c5 is going to happen. You have to now step back with the bishop here, maybe to c6, and now with queen to e4, there's simply too much pressure here against the knight and also against the piece. So in my opinion, not a good continuation anymore here for white. The rook is coming into the game, bishop is really loose, so not really the best blind here for white. So here instead of this move queen to a7, of course you don't have to, after you pick up the pawn on b7, you don't have to pick up the pawn on a7, even if you play here bishop to c6. Then the issue is bishop to d3, because you lost now a new tempo, you didn't castle. Now with this move here, white will never be able, I think, anymore to castle. You can maybe attack the bishop, but now with bishop to c4, this bishop is out of game. This is a beautiful piece. Knight to e4 is going to happen with the direct attack against the knight, with the threat to pick up the pawn on c3. Too much pressure here against white king, and white king is now stuck in the center. So although the structure here in front of black's king is a little bit also messed up, we have to say it, but I think white's king is more in danger than black's king for sure. So as I said, after bishop to h7, you don't have time actually to pick up the pawn on b7, and that's, I think, a critical moment of this opening line that I think you should really study even deeper than I did maybe here in this particular video. Maybe there are some other sidelines that bother you, but this is a position that you would probably reach maybe if you're Ragozin defense player. So 2 games I see in the database that have been played, both games ended with a draw here in this particular line. So here after move bishop to h7, Minic played bishop to b5, trying of course to get the bishop back into the game, like in the previous line where Stockfish played h6, kicked away this bishop to h4, and never this bishop never participated again anymore in defense. Now Minic is again trying to get a new defender in front of the king. Now we have c6, kicking with the bishop, bishop to f1 or bishop to e2. Both moves are basically doing the same, because the huge actually threat is this move, knight to e4, with an attack against the knight and also against the pawn. If you play here knight to f3, then we simply pick up the piece, then we pick up this one, and after king to e2, rook to e1, rook to e8, pardon me, here again I think not a pleasant position to play here for white, especially because of the light square problems now, especially because of the rook activity. So here I think black should be even slightly better. And there is also a huge problem here. We have a 3 versus 1 pawn majority attack. So in the potential endgame, of course, it's very easy for black to create a passer here. So even in an endgame stage, I think this should be perfectly fine here for black. So that's why here Minic played bishop to f1, because here when the bishop is on f1, then after knight to e4, that of course Stockfish plays, and knight to f3, this move knight to c3 doesn't come with a threat against the queen, but also with an attack against the bishop. So here Minic is trying again to keep the light square bishop on the board. Stockfish of course takes here, knight to c3, we have queen to a3, and my first question here for you is, what would you do now? Where would you go now with your knight? What's now the best continuation here for black. Pause the video and think about this position. What's here really the most progressive idea? Maybe just for fun, maybe just to practice some middle games / I would say even end game stage, because this game is close enough to reach the fully end game stage soon. So that's why we should consider now the next move in that way, because as I said, this could reach really the end game stage in a couple more moves. Okay, here actually the best move is to play knight to b5. It seems strange to allow bishop to b5, but actually after c takes b5, we have now again this amazing 3 versus 1 pawn majority. And I would say, okay, maybe this knight could be powerful here on e5 in the later stage of the game, but this knight can be always kicked away with the move f6, and the knight doesn't have any more than new good squares. So with this pawn structure, although it's slightly weakened pawn structure, and many of these pawns are on light squares, which is of course not good for the light square bishop, but I love now this position where Stockfish is now having 3 versus 1 on the queen side, has now the support of the bishop, and one of these passers is getting through for sure. So beautiful endgame idea here by the fish. I think we can understand now what's really going on now on the board. We have kingside castling. Stockfish plays immediately a5, using this 3 versus 1 pawn majority. We have rook from f to c1, b4, kicking away the queen, and now queen to e8. So this is the concept, this is the idea. As I said, we want to reach the fully endgame stage, because we're marching now with 3 versus 1. This is now this bishop is supportive. We get maybe this other rook behind both of these pawns on the b and a file. Of course, these are double pawns, so both of these pawns on the b file, but also the pawn on the a file. So this is now perfect endgame idea here by Stockfish 16. Queen to d1, Stockfish goes with queen to e6, rook to c7, and now rook from a to c8. Even giving up the pawn here on b7 just in order to trick the rook here. We have bishop to c2 here by the fish, and now again a new attack against the rook, and now basically here Minic is forced even to trade off the rooks, and nothing dramatically changed. Still there is this 2 versus 1 situation. Okay, maybe Stockfish lost the pawn, but now with the support of the bishop, with the support of the rook, with the support of the queen if necessary, this is now perfect endgame here here for white. We have rook to c1, Stockfish continues with rook to c8, and here I think black should be much better, especially because of the activity, because of this 2 versus 1 pawn majority. We have h3, we have rook to c3, knight to e5, king to g7, queen to e2, bishop to f5. If you play here rook to c3, this wouldn't be good, and this wasn't also played in the game, because after b takes c3, knight to d3, there is always this idea. The queen is coming into the game, queen to b5, you can maybe grab this pawn on c3, but eventually lose the minor piece, and in top engine level, I think this is game over. So that's why after bishop to f5, rook to d1, Stockfish plays now rook to c2, rook to d2. Of course, Stockfish trades off more pieces because, as I said, because of this 2 versus 1 pawn majority, Stockfish wants to reach the really fully endgame stage. We have queen to d2, f6. The knight is not going there, stay there forever. Knight to d3, and now queen to e4. Attacking simply the piece. We have knight to c1. The knight is now kicked away on the first rank. We have queen to c2, another brilliant move here by Stockfish, forcing basically trades of pieces, and now this is unstoppable. This is now, I think, completely winning endgame here for black. We have king to f1, a4. We have king to e2, a3. b3 of course would not be so good, because of a takes b3 and a3, this knight is covering the square, and this is also a very dangerous pass pawn, so it's not working. So after king to e2, that's why a3. We have king to e1. Even if you play king to d2, the problem here for white is here that white's king doesn't have access to all of the squares. c2, c3, c4, all of the squares are taken by the bishop, by the pawn on b4, and also by the pawn on d5. So you cannot have access somehow with the king. Stockfish calculated this in a beautiful way. It's a beautiful endgame technique. The king is basically far away from the action, and the issue is of course also now that the knight cannot move. Wherever you move the knight will simply grab here also the pawn on a2. It's not working. So after king to e1, Stockfish plays now bishop to b1 anyway, king to d1, we have h5, knight to b3, and Stockfish grabs now finally this pawn on a2. This is now really over here for the Minic chess engine. King to c2, f5, we have king to, g3, king to f6, h4, king to f7, and after knight to d2, in this particular position, the Minic chess engine resigns. So what's the issue? Let's move a little bit further. Black basically has to wait. Black will simply improve the position of the king because white can never do anything, can just move the knight, and in one particular moment we can even give up the bishop here for the knight after king to b3. Now we get the king closer, and suddenly white has to push the pawns. White has to play here f3. We play calm move, king to a5, and whatever you do, there is always the possibility to create a passer. Okay, white will also create a passer, but this position is simply too stretched for the king. Maybe white can go for this one, but then we start to push this one. Then if you go against again this one, then we start to push this one, and again black is much faster in the promotion race, and this is obviously game over here for white. So beautiful game, perfect play here by Stockfish. Amazing Ragozin defense. This is the way to go. Amazing technique, also endgame technique here by the fish. In my opinion, really a game worth to study. I've covered already many games here in the Ragozin defense, also by Stockfish with the black pieces. Please check them out. We have created this Queen's Gambit Declined playlist. Please, we have covered many also different variations, different possibilities, different defenses in our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. Here's the link. And if you want to see more brutal, sharp, tactical games played by Stockfish, please check out our Comta chess games played by computer series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.